The whole plane was shaking, people were screaming, and a woman in first class was waving a broken wine bottle like she owned the sky. She shouted, "I'm too important for rules," not knowing that the man she'd insulted earlier, the one she said didn't belong in first class, was the federal air marshal on board. 30 seconds later, she was in cuffs and her live stream had turned into Exhibit A. It started back at LAX Gate 72B. The air was stale, disinfectant, jet fuel-tired people. I had my hoodie up, sunglasses on, trying to look like any other weary traveler. On paper, I was just Fred Monk, a mid-level consultant flying home to Denver. In reality, I was Federal Air Marshal Monk, one of those invisible guys making sure this flying metal tube didn't turn into a headline. It was past midnight, the terminal half asleep until she arrived. You could feel it before you even saw her. Karen Tillman, platinum blonde hair, designer blazer phone on a glittery gimbal, stormed into the gate area like she owned the place. Her voice cut through the hum of the terminal. "You will not believe the incompetence here. They actually weighed my carry-on." She said it like it was a personal attack on her royal bloodline. I didn't react. I've seen her type before. People who treat the rules as optional, who believe no is just a challenge. She strutted to the front when they called boarding Group 1, shoving past an elderly couple. "Do you mind?" the old man asked. "You're blocking first class." "I am first class," she snapped. When my group boarded, she was already seated in 1C, still live streaming. I brushed past her row, my bag maybe grazed the air near her shoulder. That was enough. Her head whipped around, her eyes narrowing at my jeans and hoodie. "People like you," she said loudly, "don't usually sit in first class. Try not to spill anything." I didn't reply. Didn't even blink. But, inside, a little fire flickered. I wanted to say something to remind her that arrogance has altitude limits, but that wasn't my job. My job was to be invisible to watch. Still, I kept thinking about it. What makes someone feel untouchable? Money status. 1 million followers watching a fake life through a phone screen. She had no idea who was sitting in 2A. The flight attendants were doing their routine. The purser, Leah, steady sharp, exactly the kind of pro you want when things get ugly, offered me a bottle of water. "Still or sparkling?" she asked. It sounded normal, but it wasn't. That was our code. My answer. "Still's fine, thanks," told her I was the air marshal, armed and active. One subtle exchange, one quiet understanding. From then on, we were a team. Karen, meanwhile, was complaining about not getting champagne before takeoff. "What's the point of flying first class if there's no service?" she whined into her phone. The elderly woman across the aisle muttered, "She should have bought a broom instead of a ticket." I almost smiled. Almost. When the plane started taxiing, Karen unbuckled her belt and reached up for the overhead bin. Leah approached her gently. "Ma'am, I need you seated with your belt fastened." Karen didn't even look at her. "I have 2 million followers. If you think I won't ruin your career, you're mistaken." I could see Leah's jaw tighten, but her tone stayed calm. "The rules are for everyone's safety, including yours." I felt a twinge of admiration for Leah's composure. People like Karen look for weakness, for cracks in authority. She'd found none. She slumped back into her seat, muttering curses for her live stream audience. The door closed. We were sealed in. Once we were in the air, she switched tactics. Less screaming, more scheming. I watched her text her partner, the nervous guy in 3C, who couldn't stop glancing at her. They exchanged quick, silent signals. My gut told me this wasn't just a diva tantrum. Something else was brewing. About an hour in chaos hit. Ding, 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 call, buttons going off from the back of the plane. A voice shouted, "Someone's having trouble breathing." Leah and a young flight attendant rushed to help. The perfect diversion. At the same time, the man in 3C stood up claiming he needed the lavatory. Leah told him, "The seatbelt sign is on." He ignored her, stumbling toward the cockpit. 2 carts were now stuck in the aisle, blocking any path from coach to first class. A wall of metal and chaos. And Karen, she didn't even flinch. Just sipped her champagne, eyes sharp, calculating. I'd seen it before. A coordinated distraction, one front fake a medical emergency, the other move on the cockpit. I could feel my pulse steady, my muscles tighten. Then the turbulence hit. The plane dropped hard. A bottle of red wine flew from the galley shelf and shattered. The smell of sweet alcohol filled the air, and on the floor, lying between flickering emergency lights, was the jagged neck of that bottle. Sharp, heavy, deadly. I saw Karen's eyes lock onto it. Leah bent down to secure a loose cart. Karen leaned forward, pretending to pick up something from the floor. Her hand crept toward the shard. I was halfway out of my seat when Leah turned around. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Her tone was pure steel. Karen froze. I dropped an earring. She said, her smile too wide, too fake. "Then sit down before you lose your freedom too," Leah replied. Karen glared but retreated. For the moment. The turbulence worsened, violent jolts, flickering lights, passengers gasping. And that's when it happened. The lavatory door burst open. The man from 3C sprinted forward, slamming his shoulder into the cockpit door, screaming, "Let us in!" Karen unbuckled Dove for the wine glass shard and stood up, weapon in hand. That was it, the moment of no return. I rose and moved into the aisle. "Federal Air Marshal," I shouted, my badge flashing in the dim light. "Drop the weapon." She froze, stunned. The man she'd mocked, the nobody in a hoodie, was suddenly the only authority that mattered. The cabin erupted. People gasped, screamed, froze. "You're not real," she spat, clutching the glass. "You're nothing." "Security in a hoodie," I said. "Budget cuts." Then louder, firmer. "Put it down, now." She didn't. She lunged. In a split second, I stepped inside her swing close where she couldn't get leverage. My left hand caught her wrist. My thumb pressed the nerve point behind her hand. Her scream cut through the roar of the engines. The glass dropped. I twisted her arm, forcing her down to her knees. "Drop it," I repeated, even though she already had. I kicked the shard under a seat and pulled flex cuffs from my pocket. Behind me, Marcus, the ex-military guy I'd clocked earlier, had already blocked the aisle like a wall. "No one moves," he barked, steady as a rock. Leah appeared with another pair of cuffs securing the man who'd attacked the cockpit. The fake medical emergency in the back canceled miraculously. Karen was shaking now, furious but powerless. "You can't do this to me," she hissed. "I'll ruin you online. You're already doing that yourself," I said, cinching the cuffs. We secured both of them, and the first-row seatbelts looped through the cuffs so they couldn't stand. The cabin was silent except for the low hum of engines and a few sobs. Leah's hands trembled as she adjusted her uniform. "You saved us," she whispered. I shook my head. "Just doing my job." Then came the pilot's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're declaring an emergency descent into Denver. Please remain seated." The nose tilted down fast. My stomach lifted. People gripped their armrests, praying or crying. Karen tried to scream over it, all threats, promises, pure desperation. But I leaned close and said quietly, "Another word, and I'll add assault on a federal officer to your charges." That shut her up. The lights of Denver bloomed below us like spilled gold. We hit the runway hard, but we were safe. As the plane slowed, the flashing red and blue lights outside filled every window. The door opened, and a line of FBI agents boarded, calm and silent. I handed them over. Subjects restrained in 1A and 1C. I said, "Weapon neutralized." They nodded. One agent looked at my hoodie and raised an eyebrow. "Dress code camouflage," I told him. He didn't laugh. Agents never do. Karen didn't speak. Her eyes were wide empty. The mask of superiority was gone. When they hauled her past me, she managed one last whisper, "You have no idea who you just messed with." I looked right at her. "People like me," I said, "are the reason people like you get to land safely." That shut her down completely. Later, after the statements, the questions, the debrief, I sat alone in the empty cabin. My hands were steady again, but my chest still thudded with leftover adrenaline. My phone buzzed a text from my best friend, Dave. "Landed yet? How was the flight?" I typed back, "Uneventful," because that's how it's supposed to be. A week later, her face was on every news screen. Influencer faces federal charges for attempted cockpit breach. Her own live stream was the evidence. The same audience she used to bully flight attendants had turned on her mocking disgusted, "Done." The airline banned her for life. The FAA hit her with the maximum fine. The empire of self-importance collapsed overnight. I just sat at another airport waiting for another flight hoodie up invisible again. Because that's the job, to stay gray, to keep the peace, to stop the chaos before anyone even knows it existed. Some people think they're too important for rules. People like me exist to remind them they're not.